The meeting is called to order. Please stand for the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone to the November Committee, the whole meeting for the Community High School District 94 Board of Education. Mission statement, please.
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Thank you, Rich. Board agreements, please.
Request for information. When an individual board member requests information, it will be provided to all board members. One gets, all get.
Thank you, Lynn. Roll call.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Casey Mayer?
Here.
Ms. DeRemus?
Present.
Ms. Munoz? Here. Mr. Nagel?
Present.
Mr. Sake?
Present.
Mr. Zuniga?
Here.
All right, that brings us to public participation. This is the portion of our meeting where any member of the public may address the Board of Education on any topic. We welcome your comments and will carefully listen to your concerns. We will not be able to engage in a dialogue during public participation, but when appropriate, we will direct the administration to follow up. Presentations are limited to no more than 5 minutes per person, with a total time limit of 30 minutes for public participation. If you wish to make personal charges or complaints against individual employees, volunteers, or students of the district, we request that you send the board your concerns in writing rather than stating those concerns during public comment. If anyone currently present wishes to make public comment and hasn't already done so, please fill out one of the comment forms in the back of the room and hand it to someone seated at the table. At this point, we received no electronic or in-person public comment forms. So that brings us to reports and information. Teaching and learning world languages.
Good evening. Tonight's presentation features 3 components of our World Languages Division: the Spanish for Native Speakers program, Advanced Placement Spanish, and the Seal of Biliteracy. First, I'll provide an overview of the course options in the department, and then I'll provide a rationale for tonight's focus. As you know, D94 offers language instruction in French, German, and Spanish. Students who select French or German begin in level 1 and have the opportunity to take 4 years of those languages. Students who enroll in Spanish have a variety of options, including 4 years of regular level Spanish, 2 years of Spanish for native speakers, and or 2 years of advanced placement Spanish. This slide provides longitudinal enrollment data for the 21-22 school year through today. French registration, illustrated in blue, has remained stable during the 4 years, varying between 242 to 270 students. Similarly, German enrollment, captured in red, has ranged between 85 to 116, due not only to the number of students entering the program, but also the students persisting as upperclassmen. The district's flagship World Languages program, Spanish, depicted in yellow, accounts for more than 50% of our annual enrollment. Spanish coursework is differentiated to meet the needs of English speakers, native Spanish speakers, and advanced bilingual and bicultural students. As we transition to Ms. Wynn's presentation, I want to provide the rationale for tonight's topic. First, the Spanish for Native Speakers program, conducted entirely in Spanish, was initially offered at WeGo during the 2013-2014 school year. SNS is designed to provide native or heritage Spanish speakers the opportunity to build upon their speaking ability and gain academic skills in Spanish. SNS courses are critical options for ELs who currently comprise 39% of our student body, as well as dual language students from District 33. As Ms. Wint will explain, Spanish for Native Speakers makes it possible for students who are native speakers to attain a higher level of Spanish coursework and mastery than native English speakers. This topic is also valuable information for current 8th graders and their families as they prepare to register for 9th grade in January. Spanish for Native Speakers is often an appropriate placement for freshman heritage speakers. Secondly, the AP Spanish program highlights the opportunity that WCCHS students have to earn college credit in Spanish through AP testing. Additionally, the testing data Ms. Wint will share demonstrates how capable our students are when allowed to exhibit their ability by testing in Spanish, which does not occur on other standardized assessments, including Access, ACT, or SAT. Finally, an overview of the seal of biliteracy and our students' achievement on these assessments illustrates the talents and engagement of these students. This accomplishment symbolizes the aspirations of our students, the fine work of this department, and the district's commitment to establishing a culture that recognizes and values diverse languages and cultures.
Good evening. Thank you. So I am here to talk mostly about our Spanish for Native Speakers track, but first let me give you a little introduction of who I am. My name is Jenna Wint, and I have been in education since 2006. I actually was a Spanish teacher just down the road at Bartlett High School. I did that for 10 years prior to coming to WeGo in 2016 to take on an administrative role as a dean. I did that for 6 years, and then this year is my 3rd year in this role as the division head for art and world languages. So thank you for letting me shed some light on our wonderful department. I hope you enjoy. So our Spanish for Native Speakers classes, as Mary mentioned, we do offer classes in French, German, and Spanish, but today I'm just going to more focus on our native speaker courses. So this Spanish for Native Speakers, the composition of the class, it is a very unique class and a very specific class. So these are students who either speak Spanish at home, grew up speaking Spanish, and or students who have participated in the dual language program offered through District 33. Those do seem like two very different paths, but they do merge together in the Spanish for Native Speakers courses. So they have bilingual abilities. They are able to have conversations in Spanish with varying levels of fluency. Those students who participated in dual language may have a smaller vocabulary just because they weren't exposed to it from their native or heritage language, but they do shine in their speaking and listening skills. They are very, very high in both of those. So what is the purpose of the class? Well, we focus on their reading and writing abilities. These students are coming to us bilingual, but we are really working on the biliteracy component. The best comparison I can give you is like an English language arts class, but totally done in Spanish. So it is reading intensive, it is writing intensive, reading something, summarizing it. We do focus on explicit grammar rules and calling students' attention to why the language is formed the way that it is, and maybe some patterns that it doesn't follow in certain circumstances. We really want to enrich their academic vocabulary. They're coming to us being able to speak, but we really want to increase that ability to talk at the next level. These students are not like me. I learned Spanish as my second language. I didn't take Spanish until 8th grade. So these students might look like me if they participated in the dual language program, but they do have an increased skill set of being able to speak and listen at a very elite level. So we want to be certain that we are placing them in the right class from the beginning. Identification of students is our top priority. I cannot say enough about our counselors and their involvement in this placement process. They meet one-on-one with families and students during 8th grade course selection, here at night after school, and then even on weekends for kids to find out what elective options they have, what the course entails, and if this is something that they're interested in. During that time, the counselors go through, I created a flow sheet for them to kind of help identify some of the questions. And by no means am I expecting them to be experts. I'm looking for a first kind of line of defense of who these kids are and making sure they're placed appropriately. Shout out to our tech department who has provided on loan Chromebooks for us to use for the kids to log in and set up and do a Google form, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. Our counselors truly do an amazing job of getting to know the kids, making sure that we are identifying them early on so they are placed in the right class from the beginning. We do have kids who didn't maybe come through any of our feeder districts, so they are new to the district. They do and follow the same process. We sometimes get transfer students from a school that didn't offer a heritage or native speaker program. So going through those questions and making sure that they are placed and have the option to really work on their biliteracy skills is very important for us. As I mentioned, they work on the Google placement form on the Chromebook, and there's just a little snapshot of what it looks like, but I really want to know about the student as an individual. I asked them just some basic demographic questions. Were they ever an English learner? Did they participate in the dual program? Do they speak Spanish at home? Do they speak Spanish with grandparents? What literacy abilities do they have? Do they just listen to the radio, or do they actually read newspapers and books and really engage with the Spanish language in a different way? After that, I have some open-ended questions for them, like what were you like growing up? What did you do last summer? And there's no right or wrong answer. It just gives me an ability to assess their writing skills and make sure that I'm able to get that whole picture of that individual student. Through that flow sheet, the counselor put in a recommendation for their course request, and then I look through and determine what I believe is the best placement, and we check those too. So I do every single student individually to make sure that placement is what I believe is best for the student. If they don't really give me a lot of detail, I will reach back out to the counselor and or the family and try to get more from the student. We do go to Lehman. It's really important that we do have that good partnership with them for kids who maybe missed this. They didn't show up, they couldn't show up to those after school or Saturday offerings, and we have them do the course selection that way. So thanks to District 33 for allowing us to come in and really work with our kids to make sure we are able to identify who they are and that they will benefit from this class. So remember, these are kids who are already speaking Spanish at home, they've been around the language, and now we can just make sure we can see what they can do. So Spanish for Native Speakers track, it's just abbreviated SNS because Spanish for Native Speakers can be a mouthful. So their 4-year plan would be Natives 1, Natives 2, AP Lang, and then finally AP Lit. And in L2, that is somebody like me, somebody who just starts learning the language. They probably can hold a basic conversation. Hi, my name is, how are you? And probably can count to 10, right? That's what their abilities are. So they start in Spanish 1 and go 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of our feeder middle schools do offer Spanish of some type. So depending if they took it at the middle school level, a lot of them will start in Spanish 2. So if they do start in Spanish 2, their progression would be 2, 3, 4, and then AP Lang. So students that are second language learners would then meet with native speaker kids or dual language kids in the AP Lang class. So let me talk a little bit more about what that AP Language and Culture class looks like, as well as AP Spanish Literature. So this is the last 4 years of enrollment, including this year. As you can see, our numbers actually have doubled in the past 2 years for our Spanish and Language and Culture class. And this is very likely due to students having a greater interest in the seal of biliteracy, and that class being one of the ways that students can demonstrate their proficiency of the Spanish language. So while we like to look at enrollment, of course, we like to look at how many kids decide to sign up and actually take the AP Lang exam. So last year, 80% of the 56 students enrolled did decide and actually took the AP Spanish Lang exam. We are still, the registration deadline was like November 1st, but our kids will always sign up late, and we're happy to still have them take the test. So we don't have official numbers yet for May. Some of them sign up and decide it's not for them. So once May happens, we will have more specific numbers of what that percentage looks like for this year. It's always good to know how our students compare at both the state and national level. This is the last 3 years of data. Remember, this test is in May, so we don't have any data point for this year. But as you can see, our students outperform both the state and national averages of getting a 3 or higher. So a 3 would give them college credit at most colleges and universities. And if a student gets a 4 or a 5, they are eligible. That's how they qualify to show their Spanish proficiency for the seal of biliteracy. So as I talked about, AP Spanish Lang is one of the options. AP Spanish Literature is the other. And this is our enrollment for the past 4 years. We do have a smaller number this year, but remember, this is a very intense reading course, and I can't stress that enough. The AP Lit exam is given in May. Students are required to read 38 texts in Spanish, which is greater than 1 per week, and allowing time for students to not only read it, but understand the historical context that was going on and when it was written, as well as really analyze that piece of literature. We are asking our students to do a ton in Spanish. So it is very intensive. It is, as a Spanish major, some of these texts I read in college, and these students are reading their senior year of high school, which is very impressive. I would say think of AP English Literature is this comparable one. I like to give the example of Shakespeare in Spanish. A lot of it is stuff that was written so long ago, and it's not written in the same way that we talk now. So it is very challenging. And so for students to understand 38 texts, the historical perspective that was going on, and really analyze that literature the same way, these kids are incredible. These are kids who are so passionate about Spanish, so passionate about the language. These are kids who are more than likely going to major or minor or do something in their future with Spanish. They are that interested. So students who decide to take that test, it is probably one of the most difficult AP exams that the College Board offers. Last year we had 46% of our students decide to take it. Like I said, it is a very difficult test, and I'm hesitant to show you the exciting news on the next one, because our students for the past 2 years, every single student that took it received a 3 or better, which is incredible. And I feel like it's like 100%. It almost takes away from me telling you how difficult it is. But when you look at the state and national level and the percentages of the pass rate in the upper 50s and 60s, I hope you really can understand that the fact that our students are passing it and seeing this much success just shows what a great place WeGo is, and that these kids are incredible in their abilities. AP Spanish Literature, as I previously mentioned, is not a class that can be used to demonstrate proficiency for the seal of biliteracy, because it really focuses on the reading and writing, but AP Spanish Lang can be used for the seal of biliteracy. So now I'm going to talk about that. So the state seal of biliteracy was adopted a number of years ago, and it is an award presented at their high school graduation. So high school seniors receive this award when they graduate. It's displayed on their transcript and diploma. The exact seal is right up there on the screen. You have to note the language that they earned it in, and what it is showing is that students have a high level of proficiency in English and that language. So they have to demonstrate proficiency in English, usually through an ACT or an access score, as well as their Spanish abilities. Students who receive the seal receive college credit equivalent to 2 years of the world language or foreign language at all public universities and colleges in the state of Illinois, which is great. Everybody's here for free credit, right? So we do have students who maybe didn't achieve that same level get the commendation towards biliteracy, which is an intermediate low level of proficiency. They still are held to the same standard of English, however. It's just that their second language is not as high for the seal. But it's also displayed on their transcript and diploma, and a few colleges, including NIU, do give credit for this award, but not all. I've been talking to the multilingual director at ISB, and she said she has seen more and more colleges and universities be interested in potentially honoring some credit for the commendation status, which would be great for our kids. So what you all really care about, right, is how do our kids do on this? So here is 2017 is the first year it was started here at WeGo. I broke down for you the number of awards that the students got in the languages that they are in. as you can see, the overwhelming majority here is Spanish, which I think is amazing. It's honoring who our kids are and who we are as we go. And just, of course, the number of kids who do decide to take Spanish. So that is great. It's really an opportunity for us to honor and celebrate kids and their development in language. And over the past 2 years, we've seen more unique languages come out that are their home languages. We have Polish, we have Arabic, we have Ukrainian, we have Tagalog, which is amazing. As I mentioned, we've offered the commendation for the past 2 years, so we're seeing more kids get awards. Some of the milestones and accomplishments that I just wanted to highlight for you. We have our first trilingual recipient in the 2020-21 school year, and that student got 2 seals, one in French and one in German, which is incredible. We added the commendation 2 years ago, and we did have 2 trilingual recipients, and then last year we had 6 trilingual recipients. The past 2 years, all of the trilingual recipients were Spanish and one other language. This year, I just wanted to give you a progress update because it's only early November. We have 5 testing dates remaining for this year. Most high schools offer 1 to 2 test dates for the entire year. I have chosen to offer 6 for our students. In progress, as of right now, we have 25 seals and 8 commendations. As students decide to retest, a lot of those commendations will move up and hopefully get seals. I have a girl who is working on hers for Italian, so that will be a new language we add this year. I have a student who is going to take Farsi on Monday as well. And I had a very interesting request 2 weeks ago for Zomi, and nobody in the state of Illinois has ever received a commendation or seal status in Zomi. So I am working with the State Board of Ed to get a portfolio approved for that student and work on demonstrating proficiency in that language. He is also interested in pursuing Burmese. So he is only a junior, so we have time, but it's really interesting to see the number of younger students who are interested in achieving this, and I have a little group that carries over from year to year that I'm working with to get this to move. So like I said, 8 commendations. This is just from our current senior class. So I do have students who have earned other things, but they're not seniors yet. Everybody loves a good picture, right? So here's our seal of biliteracy celebration. We host a biliteracy celebration breakfast in May for our senior students who either received the seal or the commendation. Special thanks to the Ed Foundation, who we partnered with to get all of our recipients the seal cookie. And I have to tell you, I had a student who came to me who is a December grad, and she's like, I want you to know, I'm coming back for that breakfast because I want that cookie. And I said, no problem. I'll make sure to give you a special invite and I'll reach out to you. So I wrote her name down, so we are good to go. But the kids are really excited about it. I think it's just a great way for them to be honored and recognized for all of their hard work. If they choose not to go the college route, it's still an official status that they can give to an employer and say, look, I'm biliterate, not just bilingual. I've really worked on my reading and writing skills. So I know I've given you a ton of information tonight, but what questions can I answer?
I have a question. You talked quite a bit about working with District 33. Even though it's much smaller populations, are we doing the same thing to engage the upcoming students from 34 and 25?
With regard to which part?
The Spanish.
For native speakers?
Yes.
Yeah, we do get a few of them who do. I would say usually just a couple fill out the form and we do get them. But yep, same process is in place for no matter which feeder district they come from.
I want to commend you, Ms. Went, first of all, for your enthusiasm, your energy, and your passion, because it seems like just everything, the numbers are growing. So definitely, I really do think that that reflects your passion overall for what you're doing. And I definitely want to say that one of the things that I think is also very commendable is the fact that you really do take into account the background and individual experience of each student. So that is definitely very, very great to hear. And also, too, that you're making it so available and accessible. So kudos on all of it.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you for the presentation. Very detailed. Data is super awesome to see, and it looks awesome. Also, as a former French student, I took French 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's really cool that seal of biliteracy is out, and it's an awesome opportunity for the students. So thank you for doing everything you do.
No problem. Most of our students who get the seal and the commendation at were French were Spanish native speakers who have now determined if they want to be trilingual or explore another language and culture. It's incredible.
Thank you for the presentation and for what you do for our students.
You're welcome.
Those numbers are 100%. That's incredible.
Very impressive.
No, I just told you how hard it was, and then the numbers, like our kids are just incredible. So they are awesome. So merci, danke, gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That brings us to the world of our 2024 tax levy. And tonight, playing the role of Dan will be.
You wanted it this?
Okay, here we go. Dan's not available this evening. I think the flu bug kind of swept through his family, so all of his presentations and reports I will be providing, so take it easy.
Lots of technical questions.
Technical questions tonight. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about the 2024 tax levy presentation. As we start the fiscal year in July, we see how the budget and the levy are connected in the annual process. One can't happen without. As you look at the top, the district prepares the tentative budget, which we've already have done, and work clockwise around through the publication and the notice, the adopting of the budget, and now we're at a point where we have to prepare the tentative levy in front of the board. So what is the tax levy? The tax levy is the amount of money the district requests to meet our anticipated needs, which includes salaries, benefits, maintenance, curriculum, and facility needs. The tax rate is a calculation of the total tax levy divided by all of the property owner's EAV. The tax rate is then used to determine levy dollars across all property owners. In 1991, the Illinois General Assembly passed the PTEL law, known as the tax cap law. This initially only affected those collar counties around Cook County, but was also extended to Cook County in 1995. Since then, has been extended to 39 of Illinois' 102 counties. As noted here, the tax cap does not cap property tax assessments or individual tax bills. It does, however, cap the rate of increase for governmental entities and allows for taxes on new property or new construction. The PTEL limits the increase from year to year to the lesser of 5% or CPI plus new construction. If the proposed levy is more than 5%, a truth and taxation hearing would be required. For the 2024 proposed levy, we do not have the need for a truth and taxation hearing this year. To calculate the levy, we need to know four things: the prior year levy extension, the consumer price index, or CPI, the current year equalized assessed valuation, or EAV, and new property and or new construction. As you can see, we only know two of these items. In order to get the best estimates possible, we have inquired with Wayne and Winfield assessors to get estimates on the new construction and the increased EAV, which they have provided. One of the items we do know is CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. Here's a 10-year history of CPI. We use the December 2023 value for our calculations, which is noted at 3.4%. Even with the past 3 years of higher than average CPI, CPI still has a 10-year average of only 2.82%. CPI is at 2.4%, with the expectation that it will be close to 2% for December. As noted, one of the other estimates is new construction. Overall, you can see new construction has dramatically increased the past few years thanks to the development of the technology park and the over 55 community off of Purnell Road. As you can see, new construction has slowed down for this year to roughly $18 million. One of the ways we estimate the change in EAV is to look at prior years and the trends, as well as talking with local assessors. This chart represents the community's EAV history and its change from year to year. As you can see from the blue bars, the EAV continues to increase at a steady rate, and that change is represented by the red dotted line that is right around 9.5%, which is our overall estimate provided by our assessors. This chart provides an annual increase to the tax levy extensions. Recent increases are mainly due to new construction, which accounts for around 2.5% of these increases each year. Reporting fund balances or cash reserves is a newly required section of school code when discussing the levy. These are the cash and fund balances as of June 30th, 2024, as reported on our audited financial statements. Since we reported our balances under a cash basis of accounting, our cash and fund balances are basically the same. The Ed Fund is at $21.1 million, O&M at $7 million, the Transportation Fund $1.6 million. We have a couple of funds over 100%. The levy for those specific funds will be held flat with a lower than or no increase when compared to last year's extension. Per our new Press Plus policy and Illinois School Code 17-1.10, schools are now required to present to the board the annual average expenditures of its operational funds for the previous 3 fiscal years at or before the adoption of the tax levy. If the district's cash balances are 2.5 times larger than the average noted, then a reserve reduction plan would need to be filed. District 94 would not need to file this plan with ISB as we do not meet this criteria. Now that we have a little background on what goes into the tax levy, let's talk about the current levy request. The request is $32 million and is based on a 3.4% increase for CPI and $18 million of new construction and a small balloon levy for transportation. This is an increase of 4.98% from the prior year extension, so a truth in taxation hearing is not required. Dan expects the actual extension to be finalized closer to $31.9 million. Now let's break down the calculation a little further. We have a previous year extension, one of the knowns, multiplied by the CPI, another known, which is 3.4%. So based on CPI, the district's request would be $1 million. Next, we can calculate the new property or new construction. We take the estimated new construction of $18 million times the limiting rate, which is 1.8572%. So just with the new construction, the district's request is an additional $335,000 over last year's extension. Putting all this together, we come up with $32 million as the expected 2024 requested extension. Again, for actual receipts, I expect this to be closer to $31.9 million minus another $670,000 for abatements. With abatements, I expect it to be around $31 million. As agreed upon by all taxing bodies in West Chicago, tax abatements will be issued for most of the new construction built in DuPage Technology Center. For purposes of the tax levy, we will still request the full amount for the new construction, but for actual receipts, the tax abatements will reduce the extension by about $670,000. This slide provides an example of how residents' tax bill may increase or decrease depending on the increase of the tax levy and how the assessor evaluates their property. As we see in the example, the overall extension for the prior year was $50,000 with 4 taxpayers. Then the extension grew by 5% with the same 4 taxpayers. Taxpayer A actually had a decrease in their tax bill based on the assessor's evaluation, while the other taxpayers had to take a larger portion. So in this example, we have a 5% increase in the levy, but each taxpayer's portion of their tax bill didn't change by 5%. Again, this is only an example of how the tax levy increase and the assessor's evaluation affects individual tax bills. The estimated impact on taxpayers for this extension is dependent on the EAV for each taxpayer's property and the overall EAV and District 94 boundaries and the tax rate. Here's the calculation page from the levy noting the 4.98% increase. Here's a timetable that will follow for approval and submission for the 2024 tax levy. So tonight is our presentation of the tentative tax levy. Our next board meeting, which I encourage a lot of questions for Dan, is at November 19th. We'll do another review of the tentative tax levy on the 3rd of December. And then on the 17th of December, at a regular board meeting, we'll ask for formal approval of the 20.
Any questions? All right, so far so good.
Quote Dan.
That brings us to transfer of funds to capital projects fund. Bless you.
As presented during the fiscal year 25 budget hearing, the district's intent is to have up to $3 million in construction renovations over the summer of 2025. To better account for these expenditures, it was recommended that expenditures associated with summer construction be recorded in the Capital Projects Fund, which will require a transfer of funds from Operations and Maintenance Fund. Considering expenditures such as architect and construction manager fees can be recorded as construction expenditures, administration is recommending to complete the transfer this month. Per Illinois School Code, a transfer of funds from the Operation and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Project Fund requires a resolution and board approval. The district's legal team has prepared that resolution, and it is attached to the agenda for your review. The recommendation is that the board approve the transfer resolution at the November 19th, 2024 Board of Education meeting.
Any questions? All right, donation acceptance.
Per board policy, 8:80, gifts to the district, any donation over $500 is to be accepted by the Board of Education. The district solicited donations from its vendors in an effort to offset transportation costs associated with prom. There were 5 vendors who provided donations for a total of $4,700. The following donations are being presented for acceptance. DLA Architects for $1,500. Andy Frame Services for $1,000. Quest Food Management Services for $1,000. Olson Roof Company for $1,000. And Haggerty Ford for $200. Additionally, an individual community member has donated $4,000 to the football program, and a check from the DuPage County Farm Bureau in the amount of $1,500 has been received to enhance our agricultural curriculum. These donations will also be presented to the Board of Education for acceptance. The recommended motion will be at the Board of Education accept the presented donations at the November 19th, 2024 board meeting. All donation acceptance forms have been attached and included in your packet.
Those are some wonderfully nice and generous
Yeah,
donations.
Very much so.
Very much appreciated.
Going to a great cause, too.
Yes. All right, and finally from the world of Dan, pool surge tank repair.
So there's no formalized memo for this. This is more for discussion. So earlier in the summer, if you recall, we had an issue with a surge tank leak. So a surge tank is essentially a roughly 10-foot by 20-foot stainless steel tank that sits underneath the pumps and the infrastructure of the pool. It had a leak in the seams. We had somebody come out and try to weld the seams. That got us to this point, but now those welds are no longer holding. So we've been working with, and Dan has been doing a lot of work, trying to find other school districts that have pools and that have utilized contractors with this with this really unique skill set of welding stainless steel. He's found one, but the price is upwards of $30,000 to $35,000. So I reached out to Allied with Doug McMahon and asked him to tap into some of his resources to see if he could find at least another 1 or 2 contractors that specialize in this and that are ASTM certified, so we can guarantee this work is done right. And he has yet to get back. That's why we didn't want to bring just one proposal to the board. We want to let you know that we're doing our due diligence here to find at least 1 or 2 other contractors that specialize in this work, so we can ensure that we're not just throwing bad money into this project. The cost to actually replace that is astronomical, so we'd like to avoid that at all cost.
Thank you for your diligence on that. All right. Updated job description, administrative assistant to the business office.
Thanks. So as you may have noticed in our recent personnel report, we do have a retirement coming up in the business office for our administrative assistant to the business office. And in keeping with our regular practice, wanted to present the job description updates to the board for approval. Tonight would be discussion and then approval at the November 19th meeting. What you will find in the attached memo is that the recommended revisions to the job description are minimal, primarily just aimed at modernizing the position's duties to align with the evolution of the position and the needs of the business office and the district office as a whole. So again, planning on bringing that for approval at our regular meeting on November 19th.
Any questions or comments? All right, request for 0.1 FTE math overload.
Okay. So during the first semester of this school year, we were unable to hire a fully qualified math teacher to fill a full-time vacancy that was available. And so as a result, that 0.5 FTE math position was divided into 5 overload assignments within the math department. We were very thankful that we had teachers who were willing to step up and take on those sections. Very pleased to report that we found an excellent teacher to hire for second semester, and we'll be bringing that hiring recommendation at the regular meeting on November 19th. That said, the board is also quite familiar with our geometry and construction program that just launched this year and has been very successful to date. Currently, there's only one teacher in the math department who is both trained, gone through that specialized training, and has been teaching those double block sections of geometry and construction. As a result of having the overloads during the first semester, one of those overloads was a section, or rather a half block of geometry and construction. And so as we look at the needs of that program and trying to ensure the continuity and the continued success of that program, it seems to make sense to keep that same instructor there rather than splitting those sections, which would be required in order to keep flat FTE. I know the board has been very invested in the success of the geometry and construction program, which has been very much appreciated. We also ran some numbers just to compare the difference between the 5 overloads, which now are paid at an MA 8, essentially a fifth of that for those overloads, as compared to the new hire plus the 0.1 overload going into second semester. And it is not a significant difference that we're looking at there. And so the request that we would plan to bring forward at the November 19th board meeting would be for a 0.1 overload. This is, again, not a renewable overload, but one to sustain the program through second semester of this year.
I just want to point out that Julie did an exceptional job to establish continuity with that program, since it is a double block period and it's such a specialty course. She's underplaying this a little bit. She did a cost analysis of this, and really just by adding that 0.1 to establish that continuity, it's only going to cost us an additional, what, $1,600?
Yeah, the difference between the 5 overloads and the new teacher plus 1 overload section is around, what ended up running, 1663 and some change.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Thank you for your support.
All right, that brings us to school report card summary.
Good evening. On October 30th of the past month, the Illinois State Board of Education publicly released the information for all schools in Illinois provided tonight. My goal is to share our now publicly available information on the Illinois School Report Card. The information available is exhaustive and can be filtered in countless ways for any individual in the state. Tonight, I plan to share data in 6 critical areas and also provide enough information to allow for individual research and analysis of our own school's data by any member of our school community. I want to begin first by looking at our overall rating. In Illinois, schools are rated on essentially 5 different ratings: exemplary, commendable, targeted, comprehensive, and intensive. Schools are assigned one of those ratings based on their overall score. As you can see from the image on the right, our score this past school year, the 23-24 school year, was 65.74%. That's our overall index score, which rated us as a commendable school. Since Illinois has begun the rating system, we have always been rated as a commendable school. Next, these are the 6 areas of our report card that I would like to provide some cursory information to the board on as we progress through. In addition, I'll also provide some information about our post-secondary enrollment, which is also available on the school report card, but is not calculated as part of our overall index score. I first want to give just a very brief demographic summary of our school. Our school is approximately 71% Hispanic, 20% white. We are made up, this is from last school year, approximately a third of our school is classified as English learners. Now, from last year, but we do know that this year already that number is closer to 38%. And approximately 11.6% of our students have IEPs. I first want to start with our graduation rate. As you can see, the graduation rate for the class of 2023, pictured on the bottom, was 86.1%. For this past school year, the class of 2024, that number ticked up slightly to 86.7%. To give you some historical perspective, you can see here our 5-year graduation rate demonstrated by the blue bars. The red line going across the top demonstrates the state's overall average. In 1920, we were at a high of 93%, and we have had a gradual decline up until the class of 2024, in which we had a nearly 1% increase. Along with our graduation rate, I do think it is also important to share some basic information on post-secondary enrollment. The state provides information for cohorts on how much of that cohort attempted some kind of college within 12 months of graduating. So as you can see here, in 2018, the class of 2016 would have had 63% of them attempting either four-year university or 2-year community college. That's compared to the state average of 70.3% that year. As you can see, we hit a watershed in 2019 where nearly a third of the 2017 cohort went on to some kind of post-secondary enrollment. And then we see the dip in those numbers down below 60% until our most recently available data, in which we've come up to just over 61%, getting to within 5 percentage points of the state average. I do want to stress again, the Illinois Interactive Report Card, it's an incredible tool. If there are, and I guarantee you have many questions about different demographic breakdowns, year-over-year comparisons. We can provide all of that, but it is also very easily gettable for any individual in the state. That's one of the beauties of this new system the state's gone to. I next want to go to our attendance information, and I've specifically chosen to use chronic absenteeism. The state calculates numerous attendance variables, but the only one for which our overall index rating is calculated is what they call chronic absenteeism. The state defines chronic absenteeism as a student who misses 10% of school days within an academic year with or without valid excuse. So it could be mom and dad called in and totally valid, but when they go over that 10% or roughly 18 days in a school year, that would make that student chronically absent. So the excused absences could be illness, suspension, caring for a family member. It could be traveling out of the state or out of the country. But this really does emphasize that students being in school, that's the way that schools work best. And you can see here, our average last year was 28.8% compared to a state average of 26.3%. I want to juxtapose that for you on the next slide, though. So this is a breakdown of our same information, but across cohorts last year. You can see that our freshman cohort had 31.8% of that group as defined as chronically absent, compared to 29.6% of the state's ninth graders. One thing you'll see then, we dip below the state's average for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Brought us to a little bit of wonder. Dr. Johansson and I were going through this and realized something doesn't add up here. The state average being reported on this slide is the K-12 average. So that is the average of all kindergarten through 12th graders. When you look at the state's cohorts by average, the 9 through 12 average is approximately 35% of high school students would be considered chronically absent. And then this gives you our breakdown based on grade level. And again, knowing that our overall is 28.8%. Long way to say absenteeism continues to be a challenge for us, for the state, for numerous schools, but we continue to want to work, research, and find ways to make it work for our students here at WeGo. This is the 5-year trend that you can see. Obviously, coming out of the pandemic years, we see the big increase, and we have seen a gradual increase from 2022 through the 2024 school year, and again, continues to be an area of emphasis and focus for us as we brainstorm and try new strategies and positions to begin to alleviate not just the rate of increase, but to reverse that rate and to begin to decrease that number. I next want to move on to SAT. I want to point out this is one of the slides that is not a screen capture from our direct report card. When you filter it and when you work with it on the Illinois Interactive Report Card, that one gets very difficult to share in a slide deck presentation. So we synthesize the information just to make it a little more consumable for tonight, but I would encourage you to look at that individually on the report card. This is a 5-year analysis of our overall scores. So you can see that 2018-19, we saw 27% of our students meeting or exceeding the state standards on the SAT language portion of it, or English language portion of it, compared to, at that time, 36% of the state. We saw our average over the next 4 years come down to hover right around that 20, so between 19 and 22%. And the state's average came to that 33 to 30% range. Last year, we saw the state's average shoot up to 39%. As a reminder, this was the first year the SAT was administered digitally in the state of Illinois. We don't know if that had something to do with it, but at the same time, we wouldn't be sure why our students wouldn't also see a similar benefit from that. Unfortunately, as we've talked about extensively at board meetings, that was the last year that the SAT will be given to all juniors in the state of Illinois, and we are beginning that transition to the ACT. So we'll begin sharing information with the board on that. But I do want to provide the same information for the math portion of the same examination. As you can see here, from 2020-21 through last year, relatively consistent between 18 and 21% of our students meeting or exceeding the state standards, and the state settled in between that 27 to 29% average. Oddly, so the state average didn't see the same bump in math that they saw in reading. I'm still trying to unpack that and understand what happened. But the big takeaway for me here is that while we see some consistency, we don't see our students performing at the state average and where we want them. And that is something that we need to focus on and begin that continuous improvement process to address it, to see higher performance of our students on those standardized accountability exams. I want to next move on to our 9th grade on track data. 9th grade on track is defined as any student entering 9th grade for the first time. That cohort right there is identified for whether or not they pass or earn 5 credits. That means over both first and second semester, they have to pass at least 5 classes, and they can only fail 1 semester's worth of reading, math, science, or social studies to be considered on track for graduation. As you can see, in 2018, we had an 88% average, and then we saw some incremental increases in that average up until the 2023 freshman group. And then we saw a dip last year of nearly 5%, so 4.5% decrease in that cohort. One thing to point out, as from a previous slide we may remember, oh, I went the wrong way, is that is the same cohort we saw struggling with some attendance issues. So that is going to be an area that we first want to address and understand and begin to focus our improvement efforts there. This is one of the areas I wanted to include an opportunity for a demographic breakdown. This is also simply to give some really good visuals as to what any individual can do when you access the Illinois Interactive Report Card. You can do this for our school and for any other school in the state. 2 points I want to draw attention to. The first one is you look at our African American subgroup in the middle of the left side, it says redacted. Oftentimes when you look across different years, different demographics in our school report card, you'll see redacted. That means that there weren't enough students in that subgroup in that year for the state to calculate it. They want over a certain number of raw students, and I believe it's 20. Otherwise, they feel like it isn't statistically valid. One thing you may also see in some subgroups is you could see what looks like a pretty disparate drop in something. But if you look at the raw number of students that drop may be accounted for by somewhere from 2 to 5 students. But because that group is so small, each student carries a rather hefty percentage weight with them, either up or down in that demographic. The second thing I want to draw our attention to here is while some of our subgroups are certainly at or approaching the state average, we're slightly below it overall, but we also see that our students with IEPs and our English learners are definitely areas of opportunity to increase not just the performance for those groups of students, but the overall performance for WeGo as a whole. Last, I want to just share this screenshot for the 5 Essentials survey data. The 5 Essentials is a climate survey that almost all schools in the state of Illinois give. There are a handful that give an alternative climate survey of their choosing. Last year, we had 69% of our students complete the survey and 76% of our staff complete the survey. The survey is administered through the state. As a school, we are not aware of who takes it and who does not take it. We are only aware of how many people, the percentage of people who have taken it at certain points in time, and then all we can do is encourage higher participation take rates for that. The 5 Essentials is a lengthy and very valuable piece of information across 5 essential metrics of school improvement. It was developed by the University of Chicago in collaboration with Chicago Public Schools, and I would encourage diving into that on its own as well too. Again, very lengthy, dozens and dozens of questions and great ways to break down and look at it. But very quickly, we can just see that one of our highest areas is that we see high scores in the student-teacher trust. Our English instruction, our math instruction, are areas that not only have grown quite a bit, but are also areas of strength for us. And as we look across areas that we can improve in, we look at quality of student discussion, teacher influence, as well as expectations for post-secondary education, just to name a few, but you have those listed here as well. Again, it is another lengthy but very valuable document I would encourage anyone to take a look at and to look through. If I could someday explain the statistical analysis they do for the percentages to the score, I'd be glad to do it. I just don't know that I'm smart enough to provide that full explanation from the U of C scientists just yet. So
Explain the,
sir.
Go back, partially organized for improvement? What is that referring to?
So what they do is they take, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, those are the 5 essential elements of a school, and they essentially come up with a categorization of you based on if those are ranked as a neutral, weak, very weak, strong, or very strong. So they rate each of the 5 dimensions on one of those areas, and then your school is given a score based on how many of them fall in that category.
What does the color coding mean?
So the color coding for ours is the 4 that you see in yellow are neutral, meaning they're neither weak nor strong, and then the upper left hand would be considered as a weaker area for us to look to improve upon. Absolutely.
While you're on that slide, what is academic press?
If you click through it, go through it, it has quite a bit of questions. It's mostly with student responses. I can't recite for you the questions off the top of my head, but it's the rate at which students agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with various questions about, I think for lack of a better term, the ambition of the instruction that they're experiencing in classes.
Press, what's the significance of that?
I couldn't answer it.
You know,
How they're pushed to progress.
I think so. I think it's the amount of pressure in terms of to meet academic performance standards.
Has nothing to do with the newspaper.
No, not press policy related or the newspaper at all.
I guess going back to Dirk Gunderson days, the robustness of our curriculum.
That's one way to look at it, but this is really considered from the student perspective. So it really is perception data as opposed to maybe analysis of a school's total curriculum. It's probably the instructional experience a student is having more than the actual curriculum itself.
I guess is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, we're talking about the pressure on students as opposed to, progress at a good pace.
That's a great question, Mr. Nagel, and that dimension actually has several questions that make it up as a component and then are compiled through some statistical model. I think that answer to your question would be really in the eye of the beholder.
I think it's meant as a positive, not a negative.
It does kind of jump out here as a little bit, more than a little bit concerning, that one of the lowest rated things is perception of safety. And so I'm hoping that we can drill into that and figure out what it is that's giving that perception and how it can be addressed. Because you can't have an effective school if people are worried about their safety.
And there are many questions in that category we can drill into. Some of them deal with the surrounding community as well as the neighborhoods that students are living in and accessing to and from school as well.
So not just the school, because, I mean, we went through all that and had the assessment and the updating. So it is interesting that it's in the lowest, but it's also decreased the most when you would think it would have been increased. Is that what you were going to address, Kathy?
I know, I was actually in. How many schools, not just locally, but nationwide, that is a big fear for every school right now. You
Yeah.
hear it being talked about and validly.
Do they ever feel safe?
No.
Yeah.
And I don't know
No matter
that
what you
there is
do, they may
any-
never feel safe.
Yeah, is there anything anyone could ever do to give the feeling of safety back to students again with what we've seen historically ever since Columbine?
Is it just trending nationally in that direction just because of the environment?
That's exactly what I'm thinking, is it isn't specific here, but that's why I said it would be interesting to take a look. Anyone have a,
Yeah.
do better on that.
And is that decrease increased when there's a recent shooting or something that's happened? Yeah,
Certainly.
yeah.
I also wonder if
When the
there's
survey's taken.
Yeah.
is there a disconnect between what we're doing to actually improve safety versus the awareness or perception of what we have or have not done to improve safety? So maybe some of these things that we're doing to try to make it a safer environment, the student body is not even aware that we've done that. And so maybe there's something that can be done to provide some reassurance that these steps have been taken and we're, moving in a more safe
I want to
direction.
commend our dean's office, Officer Lovato, who do meet in the beginning of the year with all students through DEN and share the safety measures, Blue Point, all the various things that have been added over the past years. But I think to the points that Mr. Amos, Ms. Casey Mayer, Mr. Sake that you're making, school safety is, it can be based on things that happen here or things outside of our walls, our state. It is a growing concern in the minds of many students for so many reasons.
5 Essentials, that's a Illinois survey?
As far as I understand it, this is only administered in Illinois. Dr. Johansson, you may have more information on that than I do. I believe it is unique to Illinois and the University of Chicago in partnership with Chicago Public Schools.
I guess since they do a lot of comparisons statewide and nationwide, it would be useful to see comparisons on that as well for these things, both the change and the actual scoring.
Yep. And I think we can pull some of that for you.
A real simple question, because
Yes.
I may have missed something on one of the early slides. That include just college, or does it talk about post-secondary?
It currently includes just college and community college, so 2-year and 4-year. The state aspires to include trade school information in there, but to date, I have not seen that included in any school's summary. And Ms. Howard, I don't know, is there any timeline from the state may include trade schools in our post-secondary enrollment data?
I haven't heard any
Yeah.
conversations about that.
Okay.
I think the slide said enrolled in college within 12 months.
Yes.
So my thought was, does that include students enrolling in online that may not have the same records as enrolling in an on-campus kind of a?
As I understand it, the information the state gets, if every student in Illinois has a unique student identification number, that if they enroll in an accredited university, college, community college, that they would show up. So if it were, say, Western Governors University, which I believe is completely online, that should show up in our data, as I understand it.
And I guess the other question is, why does the state feel that 12 months is the magic number? And I mean, we're promoting people to do things after college or after high school without necessarily going right into college, doing some work, getting some experience, doing volunteer work. You know, why that 12 months is sort of the make or break. If you enroll in 16 months, does that mean you've wasted your time or whatever?
Well, great point. They do include 16-month data as well. It just got very cluttered on here. But you can definitely, they show 12 and 16 months after graduation.
But they feel the closer to when they graduated, the more reflective it is of what happened during the school years. Is that the thought process, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can never
As
speak for the
opposed to,
state.
like,
But that's a great.
5 years after you graduated.
They're looking for some kind of
Yeah.
momentum that's
Yeah,
going
they're
or
trying to
something.
tie it to the.
Yeah, maybe you're more directly connected to
Yeah.
their reason for succeeding on a next level.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
The other aspect that's not really shown is how many complete the college too also, which is a pretty low number in general. And I don't know how we compare to other districts on that, if that information is out there.
Yeah, compared to other districts, I couldn't answer it directly, but you're right. The number of those who then actually complete a 2 or 4-year degree does decrease significantly compared to those who access.
I know that's something that community colleges have been working very hard at the last few years to work on that completion issue, because it is an issue.
Absolutely.
I want to add, for the good of the group, that just going back to the safety concern, I do want to commend Dr. Johansson and Dr. Dwyer and members of their staff for taking a step forward in terms of trying to communicate and collaborate with members of our feeder district and county officials on safety. And I really think that that's very meaningful and valuable, and we could probably see those numbers change, or responses change. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments about the report card? Thank you for your presentation. That brings us to tentative school calendar 2025 to 2026. Moving ahead already.
Okay, Board Policy 6:20 states the Board of Education, upon the superintendent's recommendation and subject to state regulations, annually establishes the dates for opening and closing classes, teacher institutes, and in-service, the length and the dates of vacations, and the days designated as legal school holidays. The school calendar shall have a minimum of 185 days to ensure 176 days of actual student attendance. Attached, please find the recommended calendar for the 25-26 school year. This calendar is a product of the collaboration between the administration and the staff through the collaboration committee and aligns with ISB requirements. Once approved by the board, the calendar will be submitted through Iowa's portal for ISB approval. Noted on the proposed calendar are 185 total school year calendar days. 176 of these days are student attendance days, 4 are teacher institute days, and 5 are identified as emergency days. Furthermore, late start Mondays will continue and have been designated as school improvement program days. Detailed information can be found on the attached calendar. The recommendation is that the board review the proposed 25-26 calendar and provide feedback prior to the November 19th regular Board of Education meeting.
Any questions or comments regarding the proposed calendar?
I'd like to know, moving forward, I would like to get us into a cycle to where we're approving 2 years at a time. I don't want to rush that right now. So this is right now, but as we get into a rhythm and a routine, if we can at least project out 2 years, that'll at least provide our staff with some continuity and an understanding as to what to expect. But for right now, we're going to just stay with 1 year at a time. Maybe in the spring, I'll bring a tentative 26-27 calendar for your review and approval.
For a long time, we had difficulty projecting more than a year because of construction schedules. That was really the guiding limitation.
All right, then, that brings us to 2024 Resolutions Committee Report.
Yeah, the delegate assembly is getting a little more formalized. What they're recommending is that the boards have discussion and give the delegate direction as to whether to vote for or against their do adopt or do not adopt. There's also a constitutional amendment that you would give me direction as to how to vote. So rather than me going in and just flipping a coin at every resolution, I'll have a checklist, and also let me know if there's something that's changed on site, how you'd like me to deal with it. So I think you've all had an opportunity to read through in great detail the resolutions, so we can have initial discussion, and then at the board meeting you can tell me how I should vote, and that'll be a couple days before the delegate assembly.
So as an administrative team, we did have an opportunity to sit down and go through this line by line on a couple occasions, and page 21 was that checklist I referenced at the last board meeting. That's pretty helpful. So I'll just give you what we as an administrative team would recommend, and then you can agree with that or disagree, and we can have conversations surrounding that. So on page 21, it lists 10 recommendations. The top 6 are the recommendations that say do not adopt, okay? So,
No, the top 6 are do
I'm sorry,
adopt.
do adopt, thank you. I need to get a different pair of glasses here, or do adopt. So out of the 6, we are recommending that you adopt 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The one that we had questions on were the EBF authorized charter school funding.
I would agree with that. I think that was something that seemed a little bit odd.
So why do you have questions on that? Because I kind of question the whole funding of charter schools to begin with. So, and I'm just going off what I'm reading here, so I really don't, I have no knowledge of this at all. On the surface, it seems appropriate. If it's inequitable, make it equitable, even though I don't agree with it on doing it at all. So why are you saying against?
Well, I think the way that we are reading it, interpreting it, is that it could have the potential to take money away from.
Okay.
And that might not be the intent of the language, right? Which is why
Right.
we're having the conversation today.
Yeah.
To kind of parse this out and see what everybody else is seeing.
Well, I was wondering, I was looking into that one as well. I know there's been a lot of discussion when they were first coming up with the concept of state-authorized charter schools, and that you know, people were making that case that, well, this is taken away from the regular public schools and everything. So that aside, we've got state-authorized charter schools. We've got students that are attending those charter schools. So whether we like the charter school idea or not, it seems reasonable that since you've got students attending them, shouldn't we make sure that the EBF funding is appropriate so that the students at those schools get what they need as well? Because, you know, this isn't about do we agree or disagree with
Right.
charter schools. It's just how do we take care of the kids that are there?
Well, yeah, so I have a question then that's related to what you're saying is, does it change the amount of funding for the charter schools? Like, say we give them X amount of dollars now, does it increase that money? Or does it just take that pot of money and distribute it differently?
I think that was my question also.
Right. Yeah.
Is it just dividing it up differently? or
Yeah,
is
'cause
it-
I'm okay
is
with
it-
that
is it
part.
Is it supplementing it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's where, I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that question here.
Well, maybe that's the question for you then, when you're there.
it new money
I
or
would
is it
not agree
existing
with
money?
increased funding for it, but if they want to make the funding they have more equitable, you know,
that's
then
allocated
that, to
towards
me
charters.
personally, would be okay.
I guess.
Does that make sense, Julie, too? What,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Mhm.
I think typically they come out with not fully thought-out resolutions, and, you know, a lot of times what will happen is the recommendation will be go back and get a little more information, make it a little more robust, have better rules and things like this. This seems a little bit loose.
so it feels more like a wish list than an actual
Well, sometimes, you
resolution?
know,
Yeah.
they don't really firm things up, and then they give the legislators flexibility to do things that when that comes back, you know, we say, well, you know, that's really not a good thing. So we can recommend do not adopt, go back and, you know, get more information, provide us with more information, how would work and things like that, without necessarily, you know, killing it. Normally,
Which are you-
when they say do adopt, it doesn't, you know, automatically get killed, but
I agree.
a lot of times people will discuss it and go, oh, yeah, I hadn't really thought through that.
Okay.
Which, are you willing to request that be taken off of the consent agenda and make a statement about this conversation that we're having here and what our questions are about it?
If nobody else beats me
Begin the
to it,
discussion.
If nobody else
yeah,
beats you to it.
I'm guessing there'll be a long line of people.
With the same thing.
But
same
I,
process.
you know, if it comes down to getting ready to vote and nobody has recommended sending it back for more details, I would do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the bottom.
Did anybody else have concerns about the 1 through 6? Are we all comfortable with, other than 3, are we all comfortable with supporting the others? Or two. All right, now moving on to the bottom.
Okay, so these are do not adopt. So if you read the description, if a do not adopt resolution is appealed, what is your board's direction to its delegate as to whether the following resolutions, A, should be reconsidered by the IASB Delegate Assembly, and if reconsidered, should be adopted? Okay, so should be reconsidered, is that a yes or a no? So for 7, we said no. That was our opinion. For 8, we said no. For 9, we were on the fence with. I'd love to hear the conversation at the table here. And for 10, we were on the fence with.
Well, I definitely wanted to hear from our personnel director about number 9 and what
Yeah.
your opinions were on that one.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, a lot of
sounds like
discussion
it
about
could
that
be a
today.
good thing.
It does. Do we want to jump into that one right away? Yeah. This one, I think we had a really good discussion about earlier today, again, because there are a couple of different ways of looking at this. So obviously, face law has been a great addition, and it's really nice to have one other way of, you know, looking at new employees that are coming in and whether or not they may have engaged in any type of sexual misconduct that involved children. What what is the word I'm looking for? The resolution that is not recommended to move forward right now by the ISB is talking about extending that to current employees. Now, that gets a little bit complicated, and right now there's not enough information, at least in what's provided here, to tell us really what is the mechanism if you go through that employment history review and you get a red flag on someone who has been an employee with no misconduct issues, who's worked here for a very long time and had, proficient or excellent evaluations. What do you then do at that point? Because there could be some conflict between, the face law review and whether or not that meets a legal standard to disqualify them for employment. Versus their rights as potentially a tenured or, if it's even a support staff member, someone who's been here in our district successfully for a long period of time. So I can definitely see it creating some exposure for the district in terms of just, the legal liability that come along with going back and looking at that piece. I also think that it could be very burdensome potentially for the district and for every district to go through. We are a bit smaller in size, but I can imagine some larger districts would have qualms with potentially being required or feeling the pressure to go back and do an employment history review for every employee. And then the flip side of that is what you're all thinking and what we talked about quite a bit, which is the ethical side of it. If you have an employee who potentially engaged in some kind of sexual misconduct before they came here that isn't captured in, criminal background check, don't we want to know that information and be able to do something about that? And does our community, want to know that information if we have access to it? So it is a conundrum. I don't know that there is a single right answer to it. There are certainly some questions that are still out there.
What would you recommend that our delegate do about this one at the?
Well, we went back and forth on it, and in the end, I think the ethical side of it outweighs the potential legal exposure. So if we have the ability to know that information, we would potentially want to know that information, and so we would support this one being brought back for discussion for appeal.
So it seems like the matter is they need some more protections or clarification for the districts on what the legal standard is going to be if we do take such an action.
Mm-hmm. And that really was one of the issues when face law came around initially, was that it's this great idea and we really want to do it, but without a centralized database, it was very burdensome. And now you do see that there are some school districts that are caught up in some legal issues where, and I don't know the details of them, but if someone hasn't been criminally charged with or found to have violated the law as it pertains to sexual misconduct, but the box was still checked yes, and it meets that standard, it puts a district and the new hire in a really uncomfortable position. And so,
well, if they
there's a
haven't been charged
consideration.
with anything, you would not know with a new hire. There could have been something that occurred, but there's no way you would know.
Right.
And then I guess my next question is say something happens after they've been hired. First of all, how often are you supposed to check on somebody? Once a
Good
year,
question.
once every 5 years, once every 10 years? And then if something did happen, all right, say somebody got arrested and something happened, are the police or the court or somebody incumbent upon telling their employer? Or is that left up to the person?
Those are two really good questions. So I'll answer the latter one first. When someone is background checked with our district, they are connected to our district's ORI, which is our unique identifier as an employer. And so we are supposed to get notification if they are found, again, not charged, but found guilty of a charge that essentially would preclude them from employment with the school district. Since I've been here, we've only received one of those, and it was not a current employee. But at least I know that it works, and we do get some kind of a notification when that happens. The other piece, which was your previous question, was how often do we do those checks? By law, we're required every 5 years to do a sex offender database and a violent offender database check. So we essentially pull all of the names out of there, compare that against our employee database, and make sure there's no matches, right?
You're essentially doing something
And we've
anyways.
now started to do that process annually.
Okay.
We were able to find a way to streamline it so that it's not as burdensome,
Yeah.
and that way we can check more regularly and make sure we're on top of it should there be any potential overlap.
So this would be redundant then, wouldn't it?
Well, again, face law was really about those things that might not have appeared in a criminal charge,
Okay.
but could still be indicators that someone has engaged in dating relationships, grooming, those kinds of behaviors that you would not want to see in someone who's working with children in a school, but may not
Stuff beyond
raise
what
that
would be a
level.
criminal conviction kind of thing.
Correct.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Right. Because you're right. Only the criminal convictions are showing up through the criminal background check or those other procedures.
So one of the questions would be if they were going to implement this, would that be expected to be done annually, every 5 years? How soon, if they legislated, would districts have to do that? So again, falls into the category of maybe a good idea, but not well detailed and, understandable.
And one of the things that, as we were talking earlier, Kurt pointed out, was that it doesn't say that districts shall do this, it says that they may do this. So it gives that option, but if we have the ability by law to check whether our employees have potentially engaged in sexual misconduct involving children, it puts an onus on us to go through that process.
Yeah.
And so,
You have to do it.
Yeah.
Check if they haven't been charged.
That's what I was wondering.
And that's a really,
if they've been charged,
if
Yeah.
they have not been charged or
Yeah.
convicted.
right.
If somebody just accused someone,
Right.
is that reason to?
Unexplained.
Yeah, we pulled up the questions earlier. Essentially, and I could find the exact language, but there's both a self-disclosure document that the employee or the new hire completes, and then it's sent to each of their previous employers, and it just asks 3 questions. But really, it comes down to if they resigned because of an investigation into or allegations of sexual misconduct, then that would have to be revealed. Or if they left during an investigation. It does clearly state, though, that if it was unfounded, unsubstantiated, that does not count. And so a previous employer would not be saying, yes, this person was accused of it, unless either the investigation was inconclusive or there were no findings, or the findings were affirmative, that they believe they engaged in that conduct, but for whatever reason, it didn't, raise to the level of a criminal conviction.
Or if they resign prior to being found.
Right.
And that gets through it, so.
Right, and some districts will still see that investigation through, but if they're gone, you might not be able to conclude an investigation. You're exactly right. So if that were the case, then the yes box is going to be checked, and then it gets complicated, right?
Yeah, that's the part that makes me. So if
Yeah.
they resign because somebody's accusing them and nobody will put further, I mean, some poor innocent person could be hounded. Flip side is, get a job, but
Right.
do you want that on this? You.
Right.
Well, this
Complicated question.
resolution, basically, it allows, it permits the district to do that. That doesn't mean that the district needs to do it or can't do it without this legislation.
Can we do it now? Are we prohibited from doing it now?
I think it's probably like a guardrail against issues coming from the association, where if this was a law, and if we decided to do it, which we could do now, the association could push back and say, oh, no, you can't do it. We would say, well, the law says we could, but doesn't mean that we can't with the law or without the law. So it's really a sort of a cover our butt kind of thing, where if we want to do it, and the association doesn't want us to do it, we can say, well, there's a law that says we can. So it's not really providing any more protection from inside, it's more protection against some grievance or something like that.
So legally, we could do that now if we chose to, we just don't have a law that we could point to if there was a complaint about it?
I would have to
That's the
dig
way
into it a bit
That's
more.
the way I read it.
Because looking
Yeah.
at the language, it's a little bit odd about that, talking about it would permit school districts to conduct them, but then it said that it's up to the individual district and their rationale for saying don't approve it, so it's a little bit unclear as to whether we need this to allow it to happen or not.
I mean, FACE law is specific to new hires. So this entire employment history review process came about through this law for new hires in school districts that'll be working with children. I'm not sure that it speaks to current employees at all, that it permits or precludes us from doing that. But as such, and I think your point about working with our unions, I don't think it would be well advised for us to undertake that without.
Without
But
this.
what you're
Correct,
suggesting
yeah.
really is not necessarily to adopt it, but to look at it further, to maybe clarify it further.
Yeah, I just think there are some questions there, and again, from an ethical standpoint, we are looking at all of our new hires for that exact reason. If we had current employees who began, their employment before July 1st of 2023, which we have a lot of those, who may have engaged in this kind of conduct, I think the question is just, would we want to know that?
So you would find it to be beneficial if our district had the ability to do this. So it sounds like it might be something that we would want the association to pursue,
Or
change
at
to the
least-
law so it would enable us to do that.
Right?
Or at least clarify this better, yeah.
So it sounds like at the very least, we want it to be reopened and had some additional discussion and research
Yeah,
into it, as opposed to just discarding it as do not adopt.
Well, typically, if it's do not adopt and people feel strongly about it, it's likely to come back again.
Okay. That's good to know. I have a feeling there will be some more discussion about that for this exact same reason.
If we felt strongly about it, we could always come back next year, put a little more information in there, but this is kind of insufficient to really make a good decision. So I guess I would say stick with do not adopt at this point, and if it becomes more of an issue, we can ask for it. But I guess I wouldn't call it faith's law. I would call it the opportunity to do something similar to face law to get that background information on current employees.
Right. And you can see that the resolution committee analysis points out the exact questions that we were talking about, which are those legal considerations, bargaining issues that could arise out of it. There would need to be a lot more there for us to work with before anything like this could move forward.
And what was the other one?
What is your thinking on that?
Well, much like number 9, we spent a lot of time on this. We were going back and
Oh,
forth
right.
on it.
Oh, yeah,
So
no.
I'd like to hear the discussion at the board, at the table here, as to what your thoughts are.
I think their analysis at the end is pretty accurate. I mean, it's an elected position, and we're not doing background checks on Park District employees, or not employees, I mean, board members, which also could have a potential. I don't know, I just think it's a bit much.
I see where they're going with the idea, but
I mean, how much-
it is an issue that you are trying to treat school board candidates different than any other candidate for any other position, which they already do, actually, because school board candidates are the only ones that they require you to take certain classes once you're elected. So they already are singling school boards out for different things. This would be taking it to a new level. This is also true.
Requirements for education, and now they want to do background checks.
Yeah. And we're essentially not interacting with children.
I mean, we do have to do.
We have the ability to go
some
to
of those,
events, but
it just,
to go to events just as regular community members, just as much as a board member.
exactly. I already have to do a criminal background check just to be in banking.
All thieves.
I know. So, I have no issue with it because I'm used to it. My
Yeah.
fingerprints are all out there.
Who pays for that, I guess is the next
Look back
question.
at me.
Who pays for that background check? For,
That's not very clear.
And how do you go about doing, if you
And how do
say,
you do
if you
that?
say, hey, you want to run for school board? Well, how do I do this background check thing? What do I
Right.
have to do?
and then,
Well, you go to the ROE, it says, but if you're just running, you're gonna have to go do a background check. People won't run.
What if there are 10 candidates for 3 seats? You're going to have all 10 do a background check just in case?
Well, you'd
That's a
have to,
bit
because
much.
they'd be as candidates.
Yeah, that would be a bit much, probably, to, you are going to discourage people from being interested in running for the board.
Running than they have historically. Then what do you do?
so anyway, I'm
Well, does
okay
anybody,
on the
does
do not
anybody favor
adopt.
challenging the do not adopt, or are we comfortable
I'm
with do not
comfortable
adopt?
leaving that alone.
Did you feel strongly that we ought to consider that? or-
No, those were the two areas that we were literally going back and forth on for the last, 3 weeks, Julie? You and I, we'd walk into each other's office and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe this way, or wait a minute, maybe that way. So we wanted to make sure that we brought it here just to get your input as to,
As an extension, if we do a background check, then you go back to Faith's Law and you do it again, every year or so. So where does it stop?
Have you been good? You still good? Keeping your nose clean?
Yeah, and what happens if there is something found, that becomes the other question. Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like we've got consensus on what we'd like you to do on these issues that we can just formalize at the next meeting. The other thing that I think you wanted us to have some discussion about was, do we want to say, this is what you do, or do we want to give you the flexibility to kind of think on your feet if you hear an argument that compels you to go a different way?
And I don't think that needs to be done for the full list. It can be done on a issue-by-issue basis. So if there's something that, people are a little bit on the fence about, you can say, all these go with the flow. This particular one, see if there's any new information that comes up and kind of use your discretion.
Well, does anybody have any thoughts on that at this point as to?
I would be in favor of giving Rich the discretion. I think he's been at this long enough and understands the board well enough that he can make that decision.
I
Exactly how
totally
I
agree,
feel.
yeah,
I mean, you've heard the discussion, so you know kind of where people's
Right.
thoughts are.
yeah.
Can we do a background check on you first?
We're all delegates, must be background checked.
Check me today, but then check me in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I am
right.
totally comfortable with Rich's
Yes,
competency
I am
in this
too.
area. How many years of experience?
Fair enough. Okay, as
think
far
we
as
have consensus then.
the constitutional amendment, that's also needs to be,
Didn't they say they were putting that off now? When we were at the dinner
Yeah,
meeting,
are
I thought
they-
they said they were postponing
these aren't
that.
presenting, or they say not, they're not presenting them.
I thought that was in the, in their business meeting part. They said they're putting that off because there's some additional steps they have to go
Yeah,
through.
for these 3 amendment changes? Or, wait, am I
One,
looking
they're
at the right thing?
basically-
Oh, no, those are appeals.
they're basically going with Robert's rules instead of their own, I think.
Oh,
That's
oh, no
the
problem.
discussion. It didn't seem too controversial.
No.
one way.
That certainly doesn't sound controversial, no.
No.
All right, so then at the next
Oh.
meeting, then we'll just need a formal resolution to speak to what we just discussed then, right?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to do it would just be to go down the list by topic.
Sure.
So we'll put that in, put that in the agenda as an action item. That sounds good. Anything else regarding the delegate assembly? Right, good deal. Thank you, Rich, for representing us yet again.
Thank you.
Although it does cost me one good training session on Saturday morning.
That is the price you have to pay. All right, that brings us to new business, DLA proposals for summer construction.
More from Mr. Oberg here. DLA has provided proposals for summer construction work and parking lot renovations. As part of the parking lot renovations, DLA works with WT Engineering and Geocon Professional Services to assist with various other services. WT Engineering provides surveying and civil engineering services, and Geocon provides soil testing and recommendations for subgrade preparation and fill replacement. Both WT Engineering and Geocon provided similar work and reports for last year's projects as well. Those proposals are included in the agenda. The proposals presented by DLA are as follows. Proposal for the parking lot project for the site engineering design in the amount of $45,250. Geocon's proposal for soil testing and recommendations in the amount of $5,890. WT's engineering proposal for their survey and civil engineering services, $5,450. DLA's fee proposal for summer construction project, 9.3% of the overall cost of the project. The recommendation is that the board approve the proposal from DLA, WT Engineering, and Geocon as presented for the summer 2025 construction projects and parking lot renovations. All documents have been attached and are included in your packet.
All right, the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the proposals from DLA, WT Engineering, and Geocon as presented for the summer 2025 construction projects and parking lot renovations.
Second.
Any discussion?
We're doing that now rather than at the next meeting
We are doing that now, as opposed to the next meeting,
because of timing?
because of timing, since we're into November now.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Ms. Casey Mayer,
Aye.
Mr. Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Munoz. Aye. Mr. Nagel,
Aye.
Mr. Sake,
Aye.
Mr. Suniga,
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye. Motion carries. And there is no other business to come before the board, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you for a good meeting.